Very good morning, children. Today in English literature, we are going to do part 2 of lesson House Mouse. Up till now, we have studied that Mrs. Melody was not a friendly lady. She kept herself away from people. A mouse used to live in her kitchen. One day, she slipped on the kitchen floor. Now see what happened next. Mrs. Melody believed that the mouse, being a cat, he could have fetched the neighbors, and if he were a dog, he could have barked and howled till somebody came. If he were a parrot, he could have shouted for help. But she didn't think a mouse could do anything at all. Fetched means brought, children. He could have brought the neighbors. The mouse did not want to let her down. He ran into the garden and looked around. On the clothesline, Mrs. Melody's duster was blowing in the wind. Then the mouse had a great idea. He ran up the post and held the line and began to nibble at the dusters. Nibble means, children, to eat something by taking small bites. He bit till the first duster looked like a big H. Then he attacked the next and nibbled it into an E. The third duster became an L and the last one P. Help hung on the line, waving in the wind. The next door neighbor saw it from her window. Something is wrong at Mrs. Melody's, she shouted. In a minute, everybody was running to Mrs. Melody's house. The mouse went back underneath the sink. Children, meaning of underneath is under or below. Soon the doctor arrived. Arrived means came. And then the ambulance. Mrs. Melody was taken to the hospital. Mrs. Melody has broken her leg. Everyone was kind to her, and the neighbors brought her sweets and fruits and flowers. Mrs. Melody began to smile when she saw them coming, and she also smiled at the nurses and the doctors and even at the other patients. She became quite a popular lady in the ward. But what we can't understand is how you ever hung that message on the clothesline when your leg was broken. The neighbors said, if we hadn't seen it, you might be lying there now. What message? Asked Mrs. Melody. They brought the duster and laid them out on her bed. Help, she read. I believed it was my mouse, said Mrs. Melody. Then Mrs. Melody came home. People came visiting the house. Mrs. Melody introduced all of them to the mouse. Mrs. Melody and her mouse became good friends, and she took great care of him. She respected him and thought he was cleverest of all the mice. She kept the nibbled dusters as a proof of this. Thank you, children, and have a nice day.